Welcome to the best of first-person episodes from Phantoms and Monsters. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you'll be notified of all future uploads.
Bigfoot, Oh-mah, Hoopa First Nation account. In August of 2006, I was working in Northern California and was interested in finding Bigfoot prints. I have a friend who is a member of the Hoopa First Nation. I contacted him and then spoke to an elder. I was taken to an area where some footprints had just been found. Being skeptical, I took my right boot off and stepped down next to the footprint. I am 7 foot 1 inch tall and weigh 395 pounds, and wear a size 17 street shoe or a size 19 boot, as boot sizes are often mislabeled. I am of Lakota Sioux lineage and speak a number of First Nation languages. After putting on my boots, we heard a screaming howl. My friends started saying Oh-mah was coming and we had to leave. My friend Dave told his elder about what I had done, and we went back to the site 3 hours later. There were numerous large footprints surrounding mine and what I believe to be a large finger hole in the middle of my footprint. I was contacted a couple of weeks later and invited back to the reservation, as they normally lose a good portion of their apple crop to Oh-mah, but in 2006 they didn't lose anything. They wanted to know if I could come back every year and walk around barefoot to intimidate Oh-mah, and if I have any big friends my size. Oh-mah either saw me with the much shorter native people and thought I was another Oh-mah or recognized the footprint as a threat. The elder thought Oh-mah didn't want a confrontation with something almost as big as he and left the area. The Oh-mah footprint was the same length as mine, but 1.5 inches wider at the ball and 3/4 inch wider at the heel. The depth of the print was the same. I have spoken with some so-called experts from the BFRO and from the Bigfoot Discovery Project and got laughed at, but then they wanted me to come with them and speak to the Bigfoot via bullhorn in their native language. I rather not be used by someone who is too narrow-minded for me to speak to the Kananpayachis, literally the people of the north who don't comb their hair, Bigfoot. Sincerely yours, Don Talks with Owl Campbell.
Huge blue-eyed Bigfoot near Temecula, California. The Bigfoot I saw in Temecula, California in June 1985 was at night as I stopped on a dirt road. I couldn't drive any farther that night, and when I got out to do my business, I heard and saw it as I was finishing up. It did have an odor of something dead, like a deteriorated body of a coyote. Anyway, it stood about 50 yards into a dry riverbed with trees about 45 feet average height. I shined my flashlight in the direction of the smell and saw movement. But what may be different than most sightings is its eyes actually glowed bright blue and was about 12 feet tall or maybe a little less, judging by the tree height. His eyes were just above a limb that I measured at 12 feet the next day. I had a 357 with me, but I had a feeling that it would not stop this creature if I was to shoot it in case it came for me. I left in a big hurry, and that Datsun truck just did not seem fast enough. That was the second time I had seen one. The first was back in March 1952 in the Sage area between Hemet, California and Temecula, California. I went back the next day and measured the tree limb to his footprints, which were about 20 inches long and maybe 9 inches wide. This was a huge creature. I had a .357 I carried at all times. But it was so big I felt it would not stop it if he or she came for me. Do or don't take my word. I know that 12 feet is big, but that is what I believe it to be by the footprints and the tree limb. And one difference than others' sightings, except for the dead and foul smell it emitted, is this one difference: its eyes glowed a bright blue when a light was flashed in its eyes. And me being 70 yards distance, which is fairly close, it is out there somewhere most likely, and this area is close to the Pima Indian Reservation, which goes on down towards Mount Palomar Observatory, a whole lot of forestry type land. R.H.
Alabama Bigfoot, the Lofa legend. Mera Roberts story. My siblings and I grew up hearing hairy man stories. My mother, Clara Odie Anderson Roberts, is almost 90 years old and still has a sharp mind. She lives in the Jackson Healthcare Facility and can tell you these things herself. When she was young, a man named Dan Scruggs lived near Uncle Tom Purvis' place on the other side of Friendship, a community which was between Coffeyville and the Witch Creek area. One day he left his house to go to a nearby spring, taking his gun with him. A short time later he arrived back at his home, running and out of breath. He was very frightened, and could only say, "Hairy man, hairy man." As he had neared the spring he saw a hairy man there, and he left in such haste that he left his gun there near the spring. One day, Mother's oldest brother, Chalmers Anderson, and Elmore Bedwell, were returning to their home after having visited the Roberts family who lived in the area. About halfway between the Roberts place and the Ida Bedwell place, they saw a hairy man sitting on a log that was over a ravine. I suspect they lost no time getting to their respective homes. This also happened when Mother was young. I'm wondering if other relatives or descendants of the people who actually saw the hairy man might also have heard the stories told and passed down in their families. My oldest sister, Inez, remembers Grandma Anderson, my mother's mother, telling her something that happened when Grandma's oldest child, Chalmers, was a baby. Grandma said she was walking to a relative's house and carrying Uncle Chalmers, and she walked up on a big hairy ape sitting on a log and holding its head with its hands. When Grandma walked up, it just got up and ambled off into the woods. Grandma said she figured it must have escaped from a circus somewhere, and that it may have been sick.
Possible Bigfoot detected, Yadkin River, Davie County, North Carolina. I live in west central North Carolina. I live at a location that is very close to the Yadkin River in Davie County. The river's floodplain comes to my property line in a valley with no houses and heavily wooded. However, 2 roads to cross to get to my house. The river's edge is primarily undeveloped, with almost a 300-yard flood area clearance on both sides for miles and miles. This river floods regularly, but not very much lately. There are high-voltage power lines running across the area as well. Now that the stage is set, let's go. We have also put a game camera out to see if we could catch anything on it. We so far have caught a fat pregnant deer, several raccoons and a gray fox. That pregnant deer has twins now have been in our garden. The deer are pretty thick around here. This is not a hotbed of Bigfoot sightings, but I have been hearing something very large walking in the woods beside my house. My dog has been kicked by something and knocked out for a few seconds. All we heard that night was a thud as it sounded like he was kicked to the side. We saw nothing as it was around 11:30 p.m. on a moonless night. A few moments later, he was up chasing a scent down the neighbor's field. My son grabbed his flashlight and looked around down at the wood line and caught a pair of large red-orange eyes reflection. We went down later to investigate where they were. There's an opening right where he saw the eyes. We determined that whatever it was had to stand about 4 feet tall or so if it was standing in the field and 9 feet tall if it was standing in the woods, as the opening has a steep drop off to the tree he used as a reference spot. The last explanation is that whatever it is was in the tree at that level. We are hunters and spend time in the woods often. We have never seen a pair of red-orange eyes around here. Not sure what a bear's eyes look like, but we have no bear population around here. I often stay up very late and go outside to look around with the flashlight around 3 or 4 in the morning. I have heard on 3 occasions a very loud knock following my spotlighting around. It sounds like 2 large rocks being hit together, not like a rock hitting a tree. They have come from 3 different spots down in the backyard in the woods. The knock sounds are only heard about once every 8 to 12 days. Kind of like whatever it is only passes through this area on some kind of schedule. Not sure if that sounds logical. I have only on 1 occasion heard what I would call a howl. It was in the distance and was not a coyote. Not even close. It was a different tone and lasted too long. I would love to hear a logical explanation for all of this. Ken.
Appalachian, Tennessee Bigfoot. I grew up in the Appalachian Mountains, completely rural, in a Tennessee Valley community. My house was surrounded by forest and mountains. When I was about 14, my dad started to hear strange sounds coming from the hills behind our house. Knocking sounds, as if something was hitting a tree, and the occasional unhuman yell. My dog, a rough and tough outside boy, was very drawn to those hills at random times. His ears would shoot up and he'd quickly run up to the forest and stay for a while. Him going up in the hills wasn't uncommon, but at the time he started acting particularly suspicious about them. And don't worry, nothing bad happens to him in this story. Anyways, the noises started to become more frequent. My brother and his friend used to hunt for ginseng up in the hills, and they heard the noises too, much louder of course, since they were near the source. One day, the noises wouldn't stop. They progressed louder and louder, and there was growling. My brother was pretty much sick of it by now, and wanted to know what the FK was up there after about a year of wondering. It's evening time, about to get dark, so he takes a flashlight and a shotgun and heads up into the hills. He sees a creature that looked like what he said could be a Sasquatch. It was tall, broad shoulders wider than its torso. He saw its silhouette because of the darkness that came. He chased it off, came back to the house, told me what happened and drew a sketch of what it looked like. The noises had stopped after that day. They never came back. Oh, and a couple weeks later, a new Bigfoot special came on TV. A witness sketch of an alleged Bigfoot looked almost identical to the one my brother made. To this day, we're still convinced Bigfoot lived there. Val.
This is Lon Strickler. If you like this program, it would help us if you would give it a thumbs up. Then subscribe and click the bell icon so you get notification when we upload new first-person encounters. We have many more to come very soon. And by the way, if you have a suggestion or an experience of your own, please leave a comment.